Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I think you can tell that my voice is somewhat stronger. It's slowly improving a little bit day by day. It's still way too weak for my liking, but it is nonetheless getting better. Just have to take it pretty easy. So I'm going to be doing today's video. I can't promise anything else for the rest of the week. You know, just the other day, I had a conversation in the local computer store, and there was just me and three other guys, and we happened to be talking about guns, comparing our notes, who carries what, and this and that and the other. And we got to laughing and cutting up, all that kind of stuff, just guys talking. And that lasted for about 15, 20 minutes, and my voice was absolutely wasted at the end of it. So, again, I'm definitely better, but I'm still not back where I need to be. And Lord willing, we're working on it. And again, thank you so much for all of your prayers, all of your concerns, and what have you. Now, before I go on, let me remind you of the introduction of a brand new book based on Luke 21 and verse 22, a passage that virtually everyone admits was a description, Jesus' description of the coming fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. And he said, "These be the days of vengeance in which all things that are written must be fulfilled." Now, look, lots and lots and lots of attempts are made to avoid the power of that text. We're told, well, he clearly wasn't talking about all prophecy. He was only talking about the prophecies of the fall of Jerusalem. Well, I agree with that. We're told that it would only be the fulfillment of all the days of vengeance. Well, I agree with that. And on, one detractor, horribly acerbic guy, says, well, all that Jesus was talking about were all things related to the fall of Jerusalem and all the, quote, particulars, unquote, associated with that event. Well, I happen to agree with that as well. Here's the bottom line, folks. Every constituent element of eschatology, the kingdom, the judgment, salvation, coming of the Lord, resurrection, every constituent element associated with the consummative end of the age is, in the Old Testament, linked inextricably, inseparably with the time of the judgment of Old Covenant Israel. The days of vengeance are linked to it. The day of the Lord is linked to it. The end of the age is linked to it. Did I mention the resurrection is linked to it? And so when somebody says, oh, well, all that Jesus was saying was that all things written concerning the fall of Jerusalem would be fulfilled, they're absolutely right. But that means eschatology is fulfilled. Now, in this book, I examine all of the major objections that I have encountered in discussions of Luke 21 and 22 concerning all things being fulfilled. I'm not aware of another book that addresses this passage in such a thorough, exegetical, proper hermeneutic as this book does. So, regularly $18.95, but for the rest of July 2023, U.S. orders only, total delivered price $16.95. And that's going to save you almost $8, folks. So go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, and click on the beautiful banner right up at the very top, order the book, and you'll be awfully glad that you did. Now, today's video, I want to look a little bit deeper into the question of whether or not Matthew 25:31 and following is the same judgment as Revelation chapter 20. I've shared with you, I've had several detractors, several people argue, well, the millennium began in AD 70, and that's Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following. So they are acknowledging that Matthew 25, 31 is about AD 70. In doing so, they're acknowledging that the Olivet Discourse is not divided. I mean, if Matthew 25, 31 and following is about AD 70, then it's the same discussion as Matthew 24, 4 to 35. So, it is admitted that Matthew chapter 25, 31 is AD 70, and we are told that that is parallel, directly related to Revelation chapter 21 to 4 and the beginning of the millennium. But then we are told that Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following is a totally different judgment. We are told that Revelation 21 to 4 is about the vindication of the martyrs. Revelation 20, 10 and following is not about the vindication of the martyrs. Well, I've already addressed that, so go back and watch the 2 previous videos in which I show the destruction of Satan is the time of the vindication of the martyrs. The destruction of Satan occurs at the end of the millennium. Therefore, guess what? Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following is about the vindication of the martyrs, which took place in AD 70. That means it's Matthew chapter 25. But objection is made, and just recently here on YouTube, I challenged one particular individual to provide some positive illustration, proof, evidence that Matthew 25, 31 and following, Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following are different. So they gave me somewhere between 5 and 6, quote, reasons, unquote, why dispensationalists claim that Matthew chapter 25 and Revelation 20 are different. And it all boils down to this. In each one of the reasons that were listed, 5 or 6 of them, it was said, well, Matthew 25 does not mention the dead. Does not mention this, does not mention that, does not mention. So once again, we're back to this hermeneutic of missing words, different words being used, the negative fallacy. I mean, we're told, okay, Revelation chapter 20 talks about resurrection. Matthew 25 doesn't mention resurrection. Revelation chapter 20 mentions the dead. Matthew 25 does not mention the dead. So you see what's going on here. I have shared with you repeatedly, many, many times, how this missing word, different word hermeneutic is absolutely fallacious. There's no merit to it whatsoever. But let's just test out this question of the parallelism between Matthew 25, 31 and following and Revelation chapter 20. Instead of appealing to some missing word or different word fallacy, in other words, instead of appealing to a negative reality, that is, this passage doesn't mention what's over here, let's look at specific positive parallels. Now, it's clear that both passages speak of judgment, right? Who would deny that? Matthew 25, all the nations of the earth are gathered before Christ, and they're judged. Revelation chapter 20, all of the dead, both great and small, are raised, and they're judged. So this is an absolute positive parallel. Now, the key issue, well, let me get one more parallel first. Both passages are clearly a time of reward. That's undeniable. I mean, Matthew chapter 25, we are told about the reward of the wicked. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you. Revelation chapter 20, the Satan and his angels, his followers, cast into the lake of fire. Contrariwise, Matthew chapter 25, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was in prison, you came and visited me. When I was naked, you clothed me. Enter thou into the joys of the kingdom. That's reward. Well, Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following through chapter 22 is about the righteous entering into the new heaven and the new earth. Is that not a reward? And by the way, we've got the coming of the Lord at the time of the judgment, at the time of the rewarding. Matthew 25, 31 and following, when the Son of Man comes, then shall he sit on the throne of his glory. Gather all nations to judgment, reward. Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following, the great judgment to do what? To judge and to reward. But Jesus said, behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me. Well, how is that reward different from the new heaven and new earth? The New Jerusalem. Where's the delineation? And please, don't let anybody jump up. Don't any of you jump up and say, well, that judgment is not said to be the new creation. Oh, missing word hermeneutic again? But one of the key arguments that has been offered to me is Matthew chapter 25 does not mention the dead, does not mention the resurrection. Revelation 20 mentions the dead, they're raised, that's resurrection. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, this is really quite an atomistic approach to Scripture. Here's what I mean. In Matthew chapter 12, 41 and following, Jesus said, the men of Nineveh will rise up against the men, or against this generation, against this generation, and shall condemn it. Because they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and yet one greater than Jonah is here. Folks, did you catch the power of that? The men of Nineveh. I'm assuming that since he's talking about the men of Nineveh alive at the time of the preaching by Jonah, I'm pretty sure we're on safe grounds to say they were the dead. But they were going to rise up with the men of Israel, that generation that Jesus was talking to, this generation, and condemn it because they repented and Israel didn't. Likewise, Jesus said, the men of Tyre, the men of Sidon, it will be more tolerable for them than for the men of this generation. I'm assuming, not much of an assumption, but I'm assuming that the men of Tyre and the men of Sidon that he was talking about were also dead, just like the queen of the south back in Matthew chapter 12, 41. So we have the dead rising with the men of that generation. Now, are we correct to say that the judgment of the dead was going to take place in Jesus' generation? Well, let's see. Matthew chapter 23, Jesus said, you bear witness to yourselves that you are the sons of those who killed the prophets. For you say, well, if we had been alive in the days of our fathers, who are dead, we would not have killed the prophets. And thereby you bear witness that you are the sons of those who killed the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. For behold, I send unto you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you shall crucify and scourge and chase from city to city, that upon you may come all of... Wait a minute. Pay attention here. Catch the power of this. That upon you may come all of the righteous blood of all of the righteous, from righteous Abel unto Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. And verily I say unto you, all of these things, all of what things? The blood of Abel and onward, shall come upon this generation. What do you suppose that blood, extending all the way back to Abel, would include the men of Nineveh, Tyre, and Sidon, who persecuted God's people, you know? So Jesus is here predicting the judgment of the dead in vindication of the righteous dead. So there's the judgment of the dead, but he said all of these things that will come upon this generation. That's the living people. Matthew 23 is therefore a prediction of the judgment of the living and the dead. Okay, that's Matthew chapter 25:31, we are told. Amen. But then once again we are told, well, you see, Matthew chapter 25 is different from Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following, because Revelation 20, 10 and following talks about the judgment of the dead, the resurrection. Well, folks, you've got to ignore or deny the relevance of Matthew chapter 12, 41 and following. Matthew chapter 11, previous chapter, talks about Tyre and Sidon. You see, you've got to ignore the fact that those are predictions of the judgment of the dead in that generation. And you've got to be able to negate, destroy, or deny Matthew chapter 23 as a prediction of the judgment of the living and the dead in that generation. Furthermore, finally, 1 Peter chapter 4, Christ was ready, from the Greek word hetoimos, which means not only morally prepared, but temporally ready, imminent, to judge the living and the dead. Not just the living. And Peter went ahead to say, the end of all things, you know, the time of the judgment of the living and the dead has drawn near. It's here, Peter said. And in Peter chapter 4 and verse 17, he says, the time has come, it's literally the appointed time, the divinely appointed time, for the judgment of verse 5, which is the judgment of the living and the dead. Now we're told, okay, that's AD 70. Okay, if that's AD 70, i.e. Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, then it's Revelation chapter 20, 10 and following, which is the judgment of the dead. And I've got more to say on that with a comparison of Revelation chapter 11, Revelation chapter 20 in another video, but I'm out of time for today. And again, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to film Thursday or Friday. Still working on things. And again, I think you can tell it's better, but it's already getting rough, as you can tell, just after, 18 minutes today. So thank you again for joining me. I will see you, Lord willing. I'll see you on Monday.